Welcome everyone to today's webinar. So we're going to talk about practices for CPA firms, managing cash flow, and then getting paid quickly. So we often do topics that help us with how we deliver to the clients. And I think this is true, but it's also internal to firms. How do we make sure that we're getting paid for the services we provide to our clients? So I am Tom Wadelton. I am one of the virtual CFOs here at Summit CPA Group. And let me go through a few of the administrative things for today's session. So today's session is 1 credit. Attend the entire 50-minute session, and we will have 3 polling questions, and we need you to answer each of those questions. We'll go ahead and send you the CPE certificate from the class. The question function you have is one of the go-to meeting functions. That's a great way to interact with the speaker, and Adam and I will both be monitoring that through the session and answer the questions and get them asked during. So we really encourage people to use that question function. And then finally, the replay of this and slides and email will go ahead and be sent out to people after the session. So I mentioned I work for Summit CPA Group. Just a little bit more about us. So since 2004, we've been providing CFO and back office services to our clients. That is really the core of what we do. As a firm, we also do 401k audits, but this is the side of the business that I sit on. Since 2013, we've been a fully distributed firm. So our team members work out of their homes, which has given us great flexibility for where we get team members, and then also for our clients, kind of everywhere. And we do have 55 team members really throughout the world, spread pretty far across the US. So to tell you a little bit about the 2 speakers that we have today. Erika Segal is Associate Brand Manager, CPACharge. And so she's going to be walking through CPACharge and charging clients in the cash flow. And then also Adam Hale at Summit CPA Group is our COO and a co-founder of the company. Welcome to both of you.
And just Erika, in case anybody was wondering, Erika is the Swiftie.
It was my choice.
Throwing that out there. Like you said, one of the presenters. I know everybody was dying to know. I just wanted to get it out of the way. So I know everybody assumed it was me, but not the case.
Are you going to say what your artist choice would have been?
I'd have to think on it, but I was just too busy like looking up what you call like Taylor Swift fans. So the Swifties is what they're called.
You got it, Swifties.
You're in good company with my daughter, who is 100% Taylor Swift all the time, everything. So Erika, I'll go ahead and launch the first polling question. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and go ahead and get into it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tom. And thanks everyone for joining us today. So a little bit about myself. Yes, I am a self-proclaimed Swiftie. I have seen Taylor Swift probably 5 or 6 times, so many times I can't remember. So my name is Erika Segal. I'm the Associate Brand Manager for CPACharge. I'm joining you live here from Austin, Texas, where it's nice and toasty today. I love talking about anything that really has to do with payments, online payments, communication with clients, all that good stuff. And I'm excited to present on this deck today. You know, this is something that we came up with because we all care so much about cash flow, right? I mean, everything we have to do with is cash and getting paid faster. So we have some great strategies in this deck that we're going to talk about today to really help you get paid faster.
I'll give just a couple more seconds and I'm going to close down the polling question. So if you're wanting credit for the for CPE for today, make sure you get your vote in here really quickly. Okay, I'll close it down. I'll go ahead and share it with you, Erika. So we've got 72% of the people are saying yes, they currently allow clients to pay their bill this way. And then the remainder, a small portion of no, and then not sure, not applicable.
Cool, great. Well, we love to see that. And it definitely helps me a little bit guide our presentation, knowing that so many of you are accepting those payments online. That's fantastic. A lot of the strategies that we'll talk about today are specifically geared for you, allowing those payments online. So that's going to be awesome. You're already set up for success. So with that, I'm going to just flip over to our layout here. We're going to talk about what our agenda actually is. So we're going to start by discussing really how you can improve your processes in terms of those billing and collections. After that, we'll talk about some strategies for how you can collect on those aged account receivables. That's a question that we get all the time is, okay, well, I sent out my invoice, but now I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. So we have some great strategies that are going to help you actually get that money in the bank instead of just sitting on it, which, none of us like, right? And then lastly, we're going to finish up by talking about really how you can set yourself up for that future success using technology as a tool. Before we joined the webinar, we were all talking about how, millennials in particular, but all groups are really moving towards using technology to, all of its abilities, whether that has to do with paying bills, ransomware, all different things. So, it's really encapsulated all aspects of our life. And we want to definitely dive into that and how you can use it to the best of your ability. So with that, as mentioned, let's talk about this first section, how we can really improve on our processes as it relates to billing collections. And I'm going to start this section right off, give you some top tips, okay? So the first top tip we have here today is really ripping off the Band-Aid. So what I mean by this ripping off the Band-Aid is that no one throughout the history of time ever wants to talk about a bill with a client, right? We want to talk about our great, service, what we've done for them.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end, does anyone really want to talk about, oh, by the way, you owe me some money, right? None of us here want to talk about that. And, it can be, of course, also inherently awkward. Let's say if you finished up, some tax return or whatever it may be, they owe, a bunch of money. They're not very happy. I'm sure this happens more often than not, I'm sure. And now they owe you money too. That can be extremely uncomfortable, that you have to follow up that bill, even really no matter what the service is, whether it's you're buying a great new shirt, you're like, oh, I have to pay for this, right? None of us like that. But, it's important that you don't work for free. You need to keep that in mind and just be aware that, you did provide a product or a service, whatever it was, and you deserve to be paid for that product or service. In addition to being a Swiftie, I'm also a big fan of Friends. And the quote that I love to refer to is this quote from Monica and Phoebe when they were caterers. And the widow at the funeral wouldn't pay them. And their quote was, "We provided a service and we deserve to be paid for that service because you ate the service." So think of it the same way. You provided something to them and you need to be paid for it. This is not pro bono work. That's something different should you choose to go down that route. But, if you don't get paid, you can't support your firm, you can't pay your employees, and then you don't have a business. So first step, rip off that Band-Aid.
I like it. Who would have thought in our CPE we'd have Taylor Swift, Monica, and Phoebe? Right?
Millennials here, so
I love it.
Yeah, what do you expect? Yeah, so absolutely. And to follow up with that, it sounds like a lot of you out there are already using this strategy, which is fantastic. But you want to use that, advantage of accepting credit or debit cards and online payments to your advantage. This is really just going to reduce that friction between your client's wallet and your bank account. We're also used to just automatically putting in that information. We aren't, accustomed to having to track down somebody with a check or put it in the mail. Our day-to-day lives are Amazon, Uber, Netflix, everything's online. And you want to use those online payments to really, transfer that experience to your professional service as well and make that seamless for your clients, just like they do with everything else. So, we don't want your firm or your business to be the one thing that they have to rip out that check for. We want to make it seamless with the rest of their experiences, just like, they're a consumer with anything else. Now, another top tip we have here is to really, as much as you can, get paid the same day or the same hour even that an invoice is sent out. And of course, a very easy way to do that is by, accepting online payments. We've actually seen a statistic that about 67% of bills that are sent out online get paid within 24 hours. So no matter, how big or small of a firm you're talking about, how big of a small business, that really makes a huge difference when you're talking about balancing your books at the end of the day. Now, a couple other pro tips here. We want to send clients payment links for the exact amount. That's going to really help reduce this human error that we sometimes see. So, we're not going to be sitting there saying, oh, I forgot a zero, or can you remind me how much, I need to pay you? If you're sending out an invoice that has the exact amount on it, there's no human error, whether it be, accidental or, oh, I forgot, can you remind me? This gets rid of that altogether. That's going to save you so much time, so much effort. You send them that bill, they know how much to pay. There's no question marks about it. Now, another top tip that we've definitely seen happening more during these COVID times also, with folks not necessarily perhaps being able to pay the full amount, and in some capacities even walking on a bill because they can't pay the full thing, is setting them up on a payment plan. So, we're going to talk a little bit about authorization forms later, which are really going to help facilitate this. But a payment plan is really going to allow them to, pay a certain amount every month. You as, their accountant or their CPA, you know how much they're making every month. So you can kind of use that information to help you set them up on a payment plan that's going to work for them and work for you. Because at the end of the day, getting paid something over a period of time is much better than getting paid nothing. We all can agree to that. Now, this last section, this aged AR, which is something we get asked about all the time. People want to know about collections and how they can improve on their collections. And we're going to move further into this later, but I'm going to plant the seed here for you. Know when to make a deal and when to actually cut your losses. I know that kind of hurts your heart a little bit, but what we need to actually talk about is we cannot keep running after these people, month after month after month. So we're going to go over some strategies to help you actually, cut that off and say, this is what we're doing. And after this point, we need to move on. So with that, I mentioned authorization forms. And honestly, if there's one thing I want you to take away from this presentation, I want it to be that you should always, 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 always be using an authorization form when you're taking credit card payments, unless the client is paying online, perhaps through some sort of portal. So, a lot of us think that, oh, well, they gave you their number over the phone, or, I just did it online. That is not an authorization. So, you really need to have that authorization in place. We also need to have a third-party authorization in place if anyone besides your client is actually the one paying. And in the next slide, I'll show you just a quick example of a credit card authorization form. But there's many reasons why I'm passionate about authorization forms. But one of them in particular is as it relates to chargebacks. That's really one of the first lines of defense with a chargeback is, well, were you authorized to charge them for that amount? If you don't have that authorization form in place, the answer is going to be a pretty quick no. And with a chargeback, when you're kind of already on the defense, this is something that you can just have in your back pocket. We recommend that you include it as part of your onboarding process. Put it in your client intake form so that it's already done. You don't have to worry about it. And as mentioned, I'm going to flip this slide here to show you just an example of one. But, if somebody besides your client is potentially the one paying, get that third-party authorization form on file, as opposed to the regular authorization form. And I'll show you what that looks like as well in the next slide. But really what you're looking at here is you want any form that's going to have these certain pieces of essential information. And that essential information is going to be the payer's name, the amount, the date of the payment or reoccurring payments, if we're talking about that payment plan, the client's name and the last 4 digits of their credit card as well, or, debit card, should they be using that? And then the signature and the date. If you don't already have one of these, I highly recommend that you start using it ASAP. If you don't have one, they're very easy to find online, but, we already have one also in our resource section of CPACharge.com. Just go to our resources. You don't have to be a client to use it. You can just download it, make any adjustments. We really just want everybody to be using authorization forms. And yeah, Adam, I don't know. I'm sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, I don't know how I became passionate about this, but.
No, we always have. And quite frankly, whenever, because we've been doing this for a long time, and, one great way to avoid collections is, just charge people in advance. So, we've done that for a really long time, and having this authorization in place has been huge for us. But we always just kind of made up our own. Like we'd go, we work with clients in many different states, and we were always a little concerned with, in fact, I think early on, like 2004, I think we even got turned into the Indiana Board of Accountants. Like you're not allowed to ACH out of people's checking account. I know it's like forever ago, and now it's like common things, but we had these authorization forms. And it was just something generic we put up on Word. It looked very similar to this. We put like little Visa logos at the bottom or ACH. And then I got kind of greedy and started like taking the credit card swipe out of it and was like, nope, just here, provide your bank authorization just for like the reoccurring stuff. Yeah. Just to kind of avoid the credit card stuff. But yeah they were huge for us.
Yeah, super important. And like I said, I'll flip over. You can see there's this third-party authorization form. It looks very similar, but just something that we get all the time is a boyfriend and a girlfriend are both using you for their services, and the boyfriend's going to pay, and the girlfriend's like, oh yeah, I'll pay you back later. But then they break up because they always break up, right? Like this conversation never goes any differently. And then in that capacity, you have no authorization that says that you can charge, the other person for those services. And, if that then results in a chargeback, you would lose that chargeback because you don't have that authorization. And, we're talking about billing and collections, we're going to talk about aged AR, but, the bottom line here is that we want you to get paid. And, you need to have the authorization in place to allow you to get paid. And we don't want you to have to be dealing with chargebacks. So again.
Well, and if you're dealing with like tax returns, one thing that we did too is not only, this was in our SOW. So as Erika mentioned during onboarding process, this was part of it. So whenever we were getting ready to do our kickoff call, there was some preliminary paperwork that we would do once they signed the SOW. We had this all integrated. But even like one-off tax returns, whenever we were doing those, we found that but we fixed feed our tax returns, of course. So if you're not doing that, it might be a little sticky, but we would actually put these in and attach them to the back of the engagement letter so that whenever they signed the engagement letter, they had to fill that out. Yeah. And then one year, what we noticed was we didn't get back very many of them signed and filled out. And we were like, what the heck? What we missed out on that year is we had generic envelopes, but whenever we would send the envelopes out, we had like a checklist on the back of it that said, don't forget to fill out sign the engagement letter, fill out the the payment authorization form. We had like 4 check boxes at the back. And the next year we made sure we used those envelopes. Everybody turned them in, tons of payments, because we usually get paid in like October, November for most of our tax returns. So
yeah, I mean, there's something to keep in mind too. People, sometimes it's not that they don't want to pay you, maybe they just forget, like you said, Adam, sometimes it's just human error. I mean, I know from myself, if I read an email and I'm not like in the mindset to deal with what it is at the moment, it just falls out of the brain. And I have to I've gotten in the habit of marking it as unread again, because, that happens. We just forget. So, we're not saying everybody out there is a bad person who doesn't want to pay you. But, I'm going to go over some more top tips here of actually getting that money in the door. So the handful of them here is don't be shy. This goes along with that ripping off the Band-Aid that I said before. You're not working for free. You shouldn't really be shy about pursuing this money. And what's going to help you to do that is to really be practical and be organized. I think that example you gave, Adam, was great. If you're being organized, you're giving them that checklist, that all is going to help you get paid. We're going to talk about this more later on, but something that we found really helpful too is to bill clients regularly, predictably, and then also close to payday if possible. So we'll give you some tips later on to kind of make sure that that bill is kind of landing there at the right time. That's going to help you for sure. Following up with clients regarding those outstanding balances. This is something that one of our folks on staff actually did when they were a practicing lawyer, but the same transfers here. A lot of times, like you said, you look at an email, you look at an invoice. I use this example because usually in my desk drawer, there's usually a handful of things in my desk drawer that just didn't get attended to. It goes in the drawer. So what we suggest is, a week after you send out your invoices, let's say you're always sending them, the 4th of the month. A week after, just go to the folks that haven't paid, put some time on your calendar and just check in and say, hey, I just noticed that you haven't, paid this bill yet. Just wanted to check in and remind you of it. It's not accusatory. It's not, you're not like a collector coming after them. But, in all honesty, this is human error. It could really just be in their desk drawer. That happens all the time. So putting that time in your calendar to really just do that initial follow-up a week later, that's going to be huge. We've found a lot of success, and a lot of our clients have had success by just employing that one tactic. Put an hour on your calendar the week after you send out those invoices. That's usually our recommendation, but that's going to make a big difference. And then this last tip about getting money in the door, we really want to talk about offering options, and you can do that in so many different ways. But especially as it relates to kind of these post/during COVID times, you want to offer people options of how to pay, options of just what their comfort level is really. Maybe they are comfortable sending a check, and that's great. Maybe they prefer to pay online. Maybe they do need a payment plan. We as humans like having more options. It makes us feel like we're more in control. So offer those same, as many options as you can that, are feasible for you and your business. That's going to help you get money in the door faster as well.
Yeah, I can't advocate enough for getting payment in advance or in real time. The one cool thing about asking for the money in advance, sometimes you'll get pushback, but the nice thing about that is typically the people that are giving you pushback that want terms, they say, well, normally I get 30 days or whatever. Well, if you're asking for prepayment, then it's like, well, that's cool. I'll give you, you don't have to prepay it, but just know that whenever you come pick it up or whenever it's done, you got to pay me. And now you've basically, instead of bowing down and giving them terms, you've essentially gotten paid real time by giving up ground on the prepayment. So that worked really well for us, and we stood our ground on that, but partly because we needed the cash. So like you said, Erika, cash is oxygen, and we didn't want to run out. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's a really great suggestion. And I think, a lot of times, I think maybe more traditionally, folks haven't been used to that, but I think there's kind of a change happening here, when you see kind of like a flat rate, for working with a professional, that's not as uncommon as it used to be. And I think that's a really great, adjustment, really both for the client and, for the business. I mean, then we all know what's going on. Nobody's in the dark. There's no mysterious bills that come later that are amount you didn't plan on. I think that's great. And with that, I'm going to flip over to our third section, and I think I'm going to turn over to you, or pardon me, our second section. And Tom, I think I'm going to flip it over to you for our next poll question.
Yep. So let me go ahead and launch that poll question. Okay, that is up. Thanks, Erika.
And with that, so this next section, we're going to actually talk about some strategies to collect on those account receivables. So, I mentioned in the last few minutes, putting that time on your calendar to just take a few minutes really in a week after to kind of follow up on those unpaid bills. But in this section, we're going to talk about what happens after that. Because, that happens. People forget, or they can't pay you, or they don't want to pay you. So we're going to talk about what to do, how we can kind of deal with those things in this next section.
About 70% so far. So please go ahead and get your votes in. I'll give you about 15 more seconds to get the votes in.
All right, which one is the number one? I'm going to say, sorry, 3. I was going to guess 1 to 3, but now you just tipped your.
Yep, you're right. 60% are in the 1 to 3 category, and 19% in the not applicable. So that's our second biggest category. Let me go ahead and close it, and I'll share the result with you.
Perfect. Yeah, so, whatever it might be, we just want to get you in that smaller bucket. We want you to be, spending less time on these things, right? This is not your bread and butter. You didn't, become a CPA or an accountant to spend time collecting. So, we want to move you, ideally, whatever category you're in, we want to move you to the one lower. That's my goal. And if you were in that really small one, pat yourself on the back. I mean, we'll give you, we'll give you some tips, but you're doing a great job. So we'd like to see that. So with that said, I'm going to briefly go over this because, I know who I'm talking to. Of course, AR is going to refer to accounts receivable. They're unpaid. They've sat for a period of time. We already know this. Now, for this presentation, and largely for many of you out there, we're going to refer to this aged AR as something that's been unpaid for over 120 days. Perhaps your definition is slightly different with your business. That's totally fine. You can adjust these same strategies with how you run your firm and how you define that. But, the most important thing we want to talk about is, why is that important? We all know that we want to get paid. We all don't want to have these aged ARs, kind of hanging out there. And that's important for many reasons that you'll see here. End of year finances, distributions, also office morale, client satisfaction. I mean, we can all kind of tell when there's a vibe, when there's a lot kind of hanging out in that aged AR bucket. We're not very happy about it. It kind of trickles down. You can always tell if, the big boss is not happy with what's going on. I think it trickles down to the rest of the team. On a client side, you can kind of feel the same thing. I think what's important here is that, you want to send them a bill at the right time. And if, you send it perhaps as an extended period of time, or, you aren't really checking in on them if they haven't paid you yet, they're going to kind of have this idea that either, you're disorganized, or honestly, they could kind of take advantage of you if you're not following up with them, they're going to be like, well, they're not asking for it. So, maybe I'll just let it go a little bit longer, which of course is not what we want. And that's why this is important. This is why it applies to your firm. Now, with that, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we've also seen this, of course, during the COVID times. There's been more, less clients being able to pay in full. Perhaps they were laid off. Their businesses on their end were also suffering, or they took a pay cut. Because of that, we saw a lot more clients, on the CPACharge side, actually interested now in our payment plan feature. They didn't necessarily need it before, but now they have a lot of clients who are asking for it, or they've decided that that's a way that they're actually going to get paid. So they're very interested in it now. And unfortunately, we've seen a lot more clients just really walking on bills. And, as Adam said, if you're requiring that payment up front, or, before they can actually get the product from you, or, finish that agreement, that's also going to help you immensely in this capacity. And just a fun fact here for anyone else who may be joining us from the large, great state of Texas. Texas is actually fairly debtor friendly. So that makes it even harder to collect on these outstanding balances. So fun fact there, there's lots of people moving to Texas, but things to keep in mind, very hot and debtor friendly. All right, so these are the questions that we're gonna really start by answering here, and then we'll talk about, the strategies to get it done. So the important thing I want you to think about here is really, these seem like no-brainers, but when's the last time you really asked yourself these, and when's the last time you spent time actually coming up with the answer to this? So, how can you ensure all of your bills get paid? Duh, we all have thought that, but have you really thought about what the answer to it is? What, behaviors, skills, processes do I have in place that will actually maximize those collections? So that's, something I want you to take a few minutes, either while we're talking or after the presentation, to really answer those. Because if you're not answering them, nobody else is going to answer them for you. Sorry. All right. And perhaps these are a couple ways that maybe, you've gone about this in the past. You have required that cash up front, in a flat fee situation. Great. If that's working for you, that's fantastic. Requiring a large retainer, if you're working with someone over a period of time, that you say, I know that we're going to be billing this much eventually, just, we want it all up front. That's going to work too. The third strategy, which, is kind of, we call it like a unicorn, if you can get this, limiting your practice to predictable clients or controllable tasks where that they're going to pay on time, how much pardon me, I can't think of the word, their case or whatever it may be is going to take, how much you're going to be billing them for. Hopefully you can have all predictable clients. I mean, Adam, that would be like the dream, right?
That's what we have at Summit. That's why we flat fee everybody and get them on a monthly cadence, or make them pay in advance, then we know. So
yeah, so that really is the unicorn, which is fantastic. Now, with that, we're going to actually go into how you can take these strategies to heart. So the first step we have here is assessing the situation. I know that seems very outlandish, but here's what we're going to do. So first thing you're going to do is really make a list of your clients who have those outstanding receivables. You can see what information you want to get on here. These kind of top things are what you want to make sure is on this list. It's also important, the thing that I think is most important is the date and the amount of their last payment, if that's something that's relevant to you. So, because that's important, right? You want to treat those people much differently than if their last payment was 3 months ago. So that's really important, I think the most important. And, in some capacities, maybe this is something that you're doing manually, but you should also be taking, your technology to your advantage here. So if you're working with a practice management tool, ideally you'll be able to just export this, then, take all this information and go on to the next steps. If you don't have that in place, here's a very, very simple worksheet that I created with some funny numbers. If you really want this, just send me an email. I'll send you this lovely, really, really intense Excel spreadsheet.
This looks tough to recreate.
It was really tough. Yeah, it took me like 30 seconds. But if you need it, I'll send it to you. If not, use that technology. Ideally, you can export it right from your practice management software. Again, everything that's going to be using technology to our advantage, that's a thumbs up. So that's step one, make the list. Congratulations, if you use that project management software, you are done. You can pat yourself on the back. Now, step two, we're going to prioritize these, and we're actually going to sort that list a little bit. So what we're going to do is kind of use these terms young and old. I know they seem kind of silly, but that's just the easiest way for us to wrap our brain around them sometimes. So young. In this capacity, and in this example, young is going to be 0 to 120 days old. Now, again, I ask that you reserve time in your calendar to follow up if you need on invoices that have gone out in the last week. Here, we're going to reserve another hour, and these are for that 0 to 20 day group. We're going to send them an email, and ideally, if you're the accountant working on the case, you're going to be the one that does this. Ideally, we're not going to pass this off to an administrator. It just comes with a little bit more clout and gravitas if it comes directly from the professional. Not to say that your administrator or front desk associate is not amazing, but it's true. Some of us think that by coming from the professional themselves, they're like, oh, you took time to email me. So keep that in mind. If you have to pass it along, it's totally fine, but this is just our top tip. And in that, we want to be really clear and concise. So here's just a quick example of what you could have typed out here. Something that I really want to call out here is that, the tone is really not overly emotional or confrontational. It's just clear and concise, as I mentioned. You're not saying, where are you? Why haven't you paid? I'm frustrated. You're just saying, you have an outstanding balance. And the thing that's also going to make this super easy and, something that's going to make them actually pay is if you have that link to pay online right in the bottom. So, don't give them that option of saying, oh, well, I don't have a check, or I have to call you and your office is closed. Nope, we're not going down that road. We can say, here's a link to pay online. No questions asked. As I mentioned earlier, people in this group could really still be here because of human error. They get sidetracked. Maybe your invoice went in their desk drawer. It totally happens. So we don't want to be accusatory or aggravated in this communication with them. But again, if you want me to type this out for you, want me to send it to you, I could do that too. But
with that link, Erika, do you normally recommend also having the payment plan options with that for especially these ones that are aged?
Yeah, so at this point, we are not going down that road yet. I mean, if they do consider that, then I would say you talk about that separately. But ideally here, you just still want them to get paid the full amount. I mean, these young receivable group, I think you still think that, they could pay. There's no reason why, they're not paying. We think it's just that they've perhaps forgotten. But you in your heart of hearts, you know that they could pay theoretically in this group. Now, this next group, a little bit different. These folks, these we kind of put into like a hopes and dreams list. If they've gone this far, you've done these other strategies we've talked about, and they still are ignoring your phone call, they're still not opening your email. We kind of put this in this group that's like, if they paid, you would be stoked. You would think that the world just, stood still because you really thought that they were done. You never thought they would pay. And so what we're going to do here is actually give them a discount. I know it hurts a little bit, but this is actually something that we've seen a lot of clients have success with. And, you're kind of giving them this, like, it's like a special. You say, like, you're a special person. I was able to secure something for you. And again, we want you to reach out personally. We want you to be clear and concise. And, if we're taking that dream list, folks, we're going to show you an email in the next slide of what you send to them because it looks a little bit different. Now, of course, there are still those clients that you believe will still pay and they can pay. You can do kind of another follow-up like we did on the last slide to those folks. But the ones that you think will never pay, those are who we always get asked about. So that dream list, this is what you send to the dream list. So we've kind of seen that, you could try 20 or 30% discount, but in our experience, that hasn't really been enough to entice them back. But 50% is really significant enough to move the needle for this group. And I know that seems like a dagger to the heart, that you would give them a discount, but would you rather have 50% or would you rather have 0%? So, if we're really in that dream list, you think these folks are never going to pay me anyway, I might as well just, try to cut my losses and, offer them this discount. This is the kind of email you want to send them. So, make them feel special. Say, I was able to work out a deal for you. Not everybody gets this, do like what Amazon or somebody, a big retailer wants you to think when you open their inbox, like you're special. So you're special, if you remit payment X% within the next 5 business days, we'll forgive the remaining balance. Then we'll be done. But this email conveys that there's a deal, there's a sense of urgency. By having this short time frame for them to pay, hopefully, you're going to get them to pay and move on with your life. And, as mentioned, this link to pay online, they're really going to have to pay this online quickly. And that 5 business days is kind of almost forcing them out of that check option, because unless they're going to kind of do this right away, be local, it's unlikely that that check is going to be in the mail at your firm, within that 5-day business period. So having that link online is really just like, get it done, get it over with. And, this is just going to reduce friction. They can click and pay in a few taps. And we think, we've seen that more people are really apt to take advantage of this deal when you have that easy link for them. And, as you mentioned, I think if, they're already at this group, we've already discounted them, if they do pick up the phone and say, okay, sure, like I'll get you off my back if, I only have to pay 50%, but I have to put it on a payment plan. Great. Again, 50% is better than 0%. A payment plan is better than never getting it, right?
Yeah, and so is that native usually in that link whenever you click on it?
It depends. I mean, of course, that's kind of like a backup to the backup. We want them to pay the whole amount in full. But, we've seen people do it both ways. But, of course, you kind of want to, like I said, you want to get them to pay the new full amount as quickly as possible. Most people I've seen in my experience kind of try to use that payment plan as like a backup option, and then they say, okay, let's talk about it. And with a payment provider like CPACharge, you can really set it to saying, I want it every 2 weeks or every month, and I want this much until a certain time. And you can set it all so that it is going to cancel this payment plan after a certain amount of time or when the amount is paid. So there's a lot of customization that you as the firm can kind of control, as opposed to kind of putting that in their bucket. But
yeah, no, it's great.
Okay, so now that we've, hopefully got a strategy to track down this dream list, I know, like I said, it probably hurts us a little bit offering a discount on a service that we've likely already provided. That sucks, but better than nothing. So with that, I mentioned this earlier, the greatest strategy we can talk about here is really that embracing technology. So I think we've, there's been kind of an undercurrent of that through all of these slides so far, is that having those technological offerings and using them to your advantage is going to make all of this easier. And, we kind of mentioned it, I think, a little bit earlier and before the webinar, this payment landscape has really just transformed over the last 30 plus years. In many of our lifetimes, it wasn't unusual for a business to only allow cash payments and nothing else. Of course, with, the COVID times and just the influx of people using debit cards and credit cards, we would be shocked to see this now from the combination of those two things, COVID and people just, wanting to that paying with plastic is so ingrained in us now that we probably, can you guys imagine seeing this sign anywhere?
Well, I wouldn't be there. I'd have to turn around and go somewhere else.
Yeah. Exactly. And unfortunately, that's kind of how you lose business. You say, well, I don't have cash, bye. And the flip side here is that, look at this in 2021. I mean, the amount of payment types out there has really, proliferated, and, arguably this payment landscape, is crowded. There's so many options. I mentioned earlier that people like those options, but I've almost, I've done this myself. I'm like going to pay for something and I open my wallet and I'm like, should I use this credit card? Do I want these travel rewards, or do I just want to pay for it with my debit card? There's so many options that we're almost, sometimes paralyzed by how many options there are for how to pay for things. And, that's really, part of that is because we're really on our way to this cashless, checkless society. And, with the influx of, these, like I said, the Amazon, the Netflix, the Uber, whoever it is, all these e-commerce sites that we're frequenting, paying online and paying with plastic has really become the norm and the preferred method for most people. I mean, I would love to hear anyone, in the audience or our organizers who, like, is there a reason why you'd prefer to pay with a check?
I don't
Crickets,
think
I'm sure.
Cricket.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, if somebody has a reason, I mean, you don't want it to get cashed right away, maybe. That's all I can kind of think of.
No, it doesn't. No, I don't think of a good reason.
No,
Yeah.
thank you. That was not scripted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we really can't think of any reasons. And, there's this great example here I'm just going to show. So, Sweden is actually illustrating how, becoming a cashless society can actually be a reality. So in Sweden, they actually have the lowest rates of ATM withdrawals in the world, the least amount of cash in circulation. And, a lot of this is actually due to about over 50% of their population using what's called the Swish app. That was, I think, about 6 years ago. So I can imagine, just with 6 years going by and with COVID going by, that this Swish app has just, taken off. And you can see kind of from these statistics here that, it's driven by, their government kind of wanting this, but also, people are on board. They're not saying, oh, no, I must pay with cash. In 2010, I think it was, their central bank reported that cash was used for 39% of in-store transactions, which is already, the minority when you compare it to paying with plastic. And, I think, this move to go cashless, aside from that consumer interest to go digital, it's also largely pushed by government initiatives to fight crime, also to maximize their tax collection capabilities. And I think the plan that I read was that by, I believe it's March of 2013, so they got a couple of years to go, they plan to actually allow merchants to refuse cash in store. So, you saw that slide a couple ago that was cash only. So if you're in Sweden in 2023, let me know if they don't accept cash. So that'll be interesting to see. Because I think when you go to pay for something, I think there are some instances where you would say, oh, this is such a small amount, or perhaps you don't want them to have to incur those fees that come along with accepting cards, or you just feel silly putting down a card for maybe a cup of coffee or something. So I'm interested to see kind of where this goes.
I am noticing more, Erika, more stores that have like self-serve checkout that won't take cash. I think of Lowe's and Myers as a grocery store, and there are certain ones that says, you say yes to continue, this won't take cash. And I have to believe that that's a faster checkout process for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something I think one of my coworkers and I were talking about it. Our topic of conversation was, are there things that COVID has kind of advanced with technology or with human behavior that we are totally okay with and we want to stay? And we came up with a lot of them. I'm not mad about not paying for things with cash. I always kind of thought cash was kind of like dirty anyway. And every time you want to have cash, I feel like you never have it, or you have a 20 but you need a 5. Something that I think one of my colleagues was saying was, this ability to order food or drink on your phone from your table, and just check out on your own through an app or through their website. Everything is faster. There are less people coming and going. We can just we don't have to flag down a waiter or something to close out a bill. We just do it all on our own. Like, I'm kind of on board with that staying around.
Penny. Yeah, until they get rid of the penny, I'm not using cash. I don't want all that change in my car.
Yeah, another one we've seen, I think a lot of folks, at the beginning of COVID, kind of like knew of QR codes, but we didn't really use them that often. And I think, this QR code has just been huge. I mean, my parents are in their 60s, and there's no way they would have used a QR code or known what a QR code was before. And now I just see them whip out their phone and, bring up the menu. And I'm like, thank you, crazy year, for, teaching them something that's just going to make all of our lives easier. I'm kind of over the sticky menus and like just
Yeah.
bringing them to the table. I'm kind of done with that.
I'm sensing the germaphobe theme with you.
Perhaps, perhaps. But, bring us back on track a little bit here. Apologies for, tangents about why, paying online and paying, with plastic and all these methods have really become, so commonplace. I mean, you can see from these statistics here, we're all in the high 70s. These are from TSIS and Fiserv surveys, in 2016, 2018. So I can only assume that these have gone up, the 79% call out of people preferring to pay with a credit or debit card. I mean, that's huge. I can only imagine, given COVID and just how things have changed in the past few years. I think that's arguably got to be in like the 90th percentile now. I think this is just the way that we're going. People are paying bills online. We want paperless billing. We want auto pay. We don't want to be sending checks or having to remember these invoices that get stuffed in my desk drawer. They're in my desk drawer for a reason, and hopefully they're not that late, but they're probably already late because if they just sent me an email, I would have paid it immediately. I'm not that type of person. So, as I mentioned here, the 70% of people having that multiple ways to bill increases your satisfaction. Who would know by, just giving people more options, they'd be happier paying? Silly. On top of that, people think this is safer. Up to, 54, 53% here think that it's the safest in-person payment type. And again, an interesting call out here actually is that as income brackets increase, credit card being the preferred payment type actually also increases. So that's also from TSIS. So something just interesting to keep in mind. We're going this plastic direction if I haven't hammered it home enough already. And, a last thing that I kind of want to talk about with this online payments and, paying by cash or by check or however you want to pay. We want to talk about millennials. I'm a self-proclaimed millennial. I am a millennial. We joke that they're children or, they're on the TikTok or whatever, but this group is really powering the economy. Perhaps you are a millennial, they're your clients, your colleagues. The very youngest of them are adults by any standard, and there's a lot of them. 72 million in the US, making them the largest living adult population. And this group is accustomed to this paying online. Like I said, I don't have a checkbook. I don't know any of my friends who have checkbooks. So, these groups are going to be your clients now, or they will in the near future. And we want to make sure that we're appealing to them, as well as all the other folks out there. But keep this like massive group in mind. All right. And with that, we're just going to move on to our last section here. And I think we have our third poll question.
We do. That's exactly what I was going to say. So we've talked a lot about percentage of credit card payments and things like that. So here's a question to you around how clients are paying via credit card.
Awesome. Yeah, this is just.
I'm sure you're watching time. We've got about 5 minutes left.
Yep. Perfect. Yeah, and I think we've obviously been talking about this, paying with plastic quite a bit, but I think it's just interesting to really see, from our audience how their clients are paying. We kind of just want to know what you guys are seeing because that helps us. And then once we kind of finish up this poll, we'll kind of talk briefly in our third section here, just about how you can really, set yourself up for the future using technology.
So we got about 10 more seconds. So far, it's looking pretty even across them. So about a fourth in each of the categories that we have, from 1 to then 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, and then up to about a fourth are saying they don't know or not applicable. I don't accept them. That's higher than I would have expected. Okay, just a couple more seconds. Okay, I'm going to close it and then share it. I'm not sure. I'd be curious your reaction, Erika. That's lower than I would have expected.
Yeah, I would have too, to be honest. I mean, I don't have an explanation for you.
So 56% below that kind of third, right? 0 or nothing. Which surprised me a little bit because you said, in that first question, do you currently allow people to pay online credit ACH? Right. And we've got 72% saying yes, which maybe that means an awful lot of ACH.
Yeah, good deal.
Yeah.
I mean, like we said, the more options, the better. At the end of the day, I don't necessarily know if the firm or the business cares how you get paid or how they get paid, as long as they do get paid. So, that's probably the end game here. And, we're just going to blaze through these last slides a little bit here, but I want you to just know that, your reputation really in your community, in your field, really is one of your most valuable assets. And when we're talking about technology, that's really what's at stake. You want to be seen like these people here. You want to be modern, technologically competent, and easy to work with. And you can really accomplish this by, using modern systems, helping your clients actually modernize. If you're thinking of that example I mentioned earlier, my parents are using QR codes. I don't know who helped them do that, but great. I love it. You can deliver work when promised, enhancing that client's experience really by making it easy to work with you and, by making it easy to pay you. All of these things are going to have a great, can't think of any words today, a great impact on your firm and your business if you are seen like this. And of course, the flip side, we don't want to be seen like this. What does this kind of conjure up in your mind? This is something when somebody says, you only mail paper invoices, you only accept payment by check. This day and age is no longer normal. And we really want to, flip the script here. And by accepting online payments, working with great companies that are going to make it easy for you to do that and also make it easy for your customers to do that, that's how you do this. That's how you become modern, technologically competent, easy to work with. You make it easier for your clients to work with you too. And I'm just going to close it out here with that. I just want to thank you guys all so much for joining in. Listen to me blab about Taylor Swift and Friends and authorization forms for the last handful of minutes. Just a quick reminder. So, of course, CPACharge, simple online way to accept payments. Made specifically for the accounting industry. So that's why we're here able to make these presentations for you, is because we don't really care about anybody else. We care about you. So, easy call outs here, accept payments from anywhere, which is of course, we talked about earlier, no contract setup cancellation fees. We handle PCI level 1 security and compliance, which a lot of folks also don't care to deal with. So we deal with it for you. And we have expert support. So with that, you can see our information here if you need to reach out. If you have any questions about what I talked about, experts@cpacharge.com. You will find me there. And Tom, I'll send it back to you.
That sounds great. Thank you, Erika. And for the polling question that says people are not taking charges, I would imagine it could be a little bit overwhelming to say I would like to, but I don't know how. And so knowing that there's a company focused on the industry that says, let us help make that easy, and you don't have to do tons of work to figure out what that means. And I know we use it really successfully. So thanks for giving us that overview. A couple things before we go on, a couple offers that we have. Part of your reason for being here today was to learn. We hope you want to keep learning. So we have the Modern CPA Success Show is a podcast that we have that you'll be able to realize some really good topics. You can find that on YouTube, also places where you can find audio podcasts. There's a Slack community called the CFO community that has well over 100 members that are pretty interactive and asking questions, sharing information, dialogue. There's a book club, there's a marketing club, other organizations. We would like other people to join, be interactive with that. You've got a promo code that you can use. It gives you 1 month of free access to go ahead and check that out. So we would encourage you to do that. Additionally, we are offering a course, the Virtual CFO Playbook. So if you hear the term Virtual CFO, which we're hearing an awful lot, and are thinking this is a direction where you'd like to go, this is an intensive course that really goes through this playbook of how do you do it. Adam and Jody from our firm are teaching this along with several other people, but there's 15 different modules. You can see other things that are offered, like a free coaching session with me and Adam. You can see a book. That Slack community I mentioned is part of that. And there's a weekly meeting where we probably have, Adam, 5 to 10 different CPA firms that join each week, sharing ideas, asking questions, so you can be part of this group that's learning together as you go through. So we really think that that is a great offering that we have. And then finally, so we're looking for great people. So if part of your reason coming here is learning, but then this sounds cool and you're looking for another opportunity, please contact us, because we're growing and we think we can offer some really good things for people. So finally, I'll thank Eric and Adam for being here. If you want to reach out, you can contact us through the schedule consultation. Erika, on her final thank you slide, also had an email if you want to reach out to her via CPACharge. Otherwise, thank you everyone for participating today. Erika, thank you again for presenting.
Absolutely. Thank you all for indulging my anecdotes and favorite song.
Yeah, and just a quick plug, Summit does use CPACharge, and it works out really great for us. So I definitely encourage folks to reach out to Erika.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, you can hop over to CPACharge.com. We have a special promo happening in June. So if you're interested, you can jump on over and take advantage of that for a couple more weeks here. So
Sounds great. Thanks, everyone.
thanks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.